Welcome to our podcast. I'm Stacey Donadio.
And I'm Shannon Fasone from Turnkey Women,
where we're opening doors for women in business.
Cheers. Welcome back to our next podcast for Turnkey Women. I am beyond excited, emotional, and super proud to have Shay Stillwell. I'm already getting shaky in my voice.
Me too, actually.
From Speech Start. And I'm shaky because she changed our lives. So, Stacey, talk.
So, Shay.
Yeah.
Shay.
How long have you been first, let's clarify. Are you a speech therapist, speech pathologist?
Start from the beginning.
So it's the same thing technically. Okay. Sometimes we're called speech therapists. Speech language pathologist is like the official title.
Okay.
Fancy.
But yeah.
It does sound fancy.
Right? I know.
Yeah.
So SLP is like the short and sweet kind of.
Okay.
Or speech therapist is fine.
Okay.
I'm not offended by either title.
She's not just any of that. Like, she is somebody who innately has a gift that sees things that the everyday person just wouldn't see, and has ways to help children and families that, like, you would never know unless you were just Shay. And your mom is the same way.
She is. Yeah, I think that's where it all came from.
Are you guys partners? You work together?
Yeah,
so owned and operated.
Yep, both of us. And she's, she should probably be retired now, but she's still in it
She
very
would
much.
never stop.
She never stops.
She has a gift.
Yeah, and she always had this like drive to like help kids and be involved, and like I always tell her, like, you're not really like a grandma, like she's my kid's grandma, but she's never, I don't know, she just always has that, never died out for her, that like just like, I don't know, she
loves
wants, to
loves.
be there.
Does she have fun?
Yeah.
She has fun
Loves
while
it.
she's doing it.
Yeah. So that's kind of where, and I was always around it as a child because Speech Start is our practice, and she started it years ago. It started in our house,
Okay.
Which was funny because, like, I was a little kid and seeing all these other kids with various diagnoses, various needs, but they were coming for speech therapy in our home, and so from birth, I was always involved in this, like, on some level.
Okay.
And then I was in the group sessions that she ran, and then I, went.
Since what age, though? Like, you were in office.
Yeah.
Like, as a teenager.
She officially moved to like the office setting in, I think, 99. So my youngest brother wasn't even born yet. He was born that year. So she was pregnant opening this practice. And I was that's where I almost like hung out. Like,
Like most kids, you go to your parents' job when you have to, get through the day and whatever's happening. But when I first met Shay, I met Shay before I met your mom is Bernadette.
Yes.
Which
My
is
mom is Bernadette.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
That's
nobody's
unusual name. I know.
And that's
so
Does
funny.
she go by Bernie?
Yes.
Same.
That is so funny.
Yes, and that's my great aunt that I took my confirmation name.
Really?
Yes.
Too funny.
Right.
See, that name is special.
It's
It
very
is.
special,
It is.
and it was very meaningful. And the first time I met Shay was at my best friend's son's birthday party.
Oh, yeah.
And we were with another agency closer to our home. And I just kept saying to my best friend, I was like, this doesn't feel right. Like, they're not, I keep asking these questions and getting these like glossed over, very vague. It made everything more confusing. Like, we know something's happening, but nobody would be like real with us. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to the birthday party, and Betsy said to me, Shay's going to be there. Like, talk to her. Mm-hmm. And of course, at that moment, everything was gripping. Like, you think I'm choked up now. Mm-hmm. This was like a different version of what the fuck. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing Shay, and before I introduced myself, I watched her, and I watched her watch my son.
I did watch your son. I actually
And
do
it was
remember
like,
that.
I saw that, like, she's always a therapist first.
Yes. It always, and sometimes I have to turn it off because I'm like, I don't know if I'm offending people, but
But
just
you didn't
naturally,
say
like,
anything.
Always assessing.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
And like Betsy had
not even
said
on
something
purpose.
to you, so it wasn't anything like, oh, she's watching my kid. It was like she knew I was having, and she went into like therapist eval. I need to figure out, and that was one of the first things that ever resonated with me was when we did finally talk that day, and it was very brief. The information you gave me in that 5 minutes was more than I had gotten in the months that I was with this other therapist.
Yeah, that's so funny because I always think back to that party and I'm like, you don't want to overstep. You never want it to be like uncomfortable. But I was like, I don't know, something about your oldest son too. I was like, I feel like he needs to be with me. Like I just had this weird
She's
like
his
I
person.
get him.
She's his person.
There's
I
not
love that.
I don't you know, every kid is different, but him in particular, I was like, this is my something. We're like, we weren't even really looking at each other, like we weren't engaging with each other, but something about him, I was like, we need to be together. So I need to work
There
with
was a
this kid.
connection.
Yeah.
And obviously it wasn't like they didn't sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah.
It was all energy. And it was all so natural. And I say this every day. And there's two things I say. The first is I met the person that I knew in my heart would literally change my kid's life. And I met the person that like made me an expert on experts and empowered me and gave me confidence that I remember saying to my husband, like, I am so afraid I'm going to fail this kid. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know any of this. I never want to become a teacher for a reason. Like, the responsibility that you bear. And you're a therapist and a teacher and like a guidance counselor and my therapist. And I was so afraid. And you quieted these fears by just talking to me and explaining it to me in a way that didn't seem so daunting.
Yeah, I do also think you as a parent, though, I have to say, and I'm sure you know this about her too. You
crazy.
You kind of no, but you like took it away. Like you're very reasonable, and so, you know, you didn't go into a deep dark hole. I don't know if it was that
Not
stage.
in front of you.
Right, or if that was the stage you were at in the whole process. But you were like, okay, let's do it. And I always say your son was the only one during COVID on my entire caseload who made any progress. He
started
literally
talking.
progressed during COVID, which
Yeah.
no kid progressed during COVID.
Yeah.
I don't think I progressed during COVID.
No,
We
my
both
son
did.
My son had to start speech because of COVID.
Yeah.
Because he went through kindergarten and most of first grade with everyone, well, his teacher wearing a mask.
Yeah, and that was because you
That's
put the work in
amazing.
and you like kind of just
I would have never been able, I mean, so you have to understand, and this is probably the most open I've ever been in a public forum. I'm very open privately with people, and I don't obviously hide anything, but it was tough because you have your child here and everybody says, oh, you don't fall in love with your kid right away. You don't, like, it's something that happens. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't know what to do here to connect with my son.
Yeah.
And you gave me all of these very actionable steps and tools to connect with some that I thought I would just be like we would be here. And when we went into this journey together, you saw his affinity for technology and most of the responses we were getting. So my son used an AAC device, and I'll let you explain that
How
a little
old
more.
was he? Like, right.
was he 2 when he came to me or
2.5, because we were with the
other.
other agency, I think, for like 6 months, and he went right when he was 2. And then when I switched to you, I think he was like 2.5. And Shay said to me, I think we should use an AAC device and explain what that is, because you are one of very few therapists who have the actual certifications for a child with severe apraxia to be able to use a device to communicate.
Yeah, so I knew, I was like, he's going to talk. And I know some people were like, they question me whenever I say that about
I question
any child. They're like,
Yeah.
are you sure? Like, I'm like, they're going to talk. And I knew he would. I just didn't know when. But I knew that in his brain there was so much going on. Like, there was so much knowledge. And I remember that first time, I just literally watched him. Even in our session, that first session, I just watched him. And I was like, he is figuring these things out. He's so smart. Like, there's so much happening, but that he's not saying. And so that was the first step with the augmentative device. He has an iPad with, something called Touch Chat, which is just basically a language system that he uses to say all of these beautiful things that he has in his head. And he, for now he says them all verbally, but he, at the time had all of this going on that he couldn't get out. And so this system was kind of like the segue into confirming that what
Like,
what
it
he was
wasn't
thinking-
cognitive, right? Like, the first thoughts that I had was like, does he have the ability to reasonably think? Like, does he know what we're all saying? Does he understand? Is he present?
Yeah.
Like, it was super confusing, and that was a game changer. And there were so many outside voices, other parents.
Yeah. No, it's scary when someone else
Professionals.
suggests that. Yes.
Did he have the apraxia diagnosis when you met?
So
She-
yes.
Okay.
And that was
Diagnosed.
definitely part of his journey too, where he had it up here, it wasn't coming out, it wasn't connecting, he wasn't able to produce those sounds in words at the time. And even now we still brush up on some of that stuff, but he's come such a long way. This was confirming okay, he's got it up there.
Okay.
Because sometimes it's so hard to show and to prove that we
Right.
feel like they do. But this system really like let
Especially
him
when they're that
show
young,
us.
too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So because I didn't know what apraxia was until I met Shannon. Can you just briefly explain it?
Yeah. So apraxia is. They say it's a neurological condition, which I guess it is in a sense where it's neurological. It has something to do with the brain where we have all these thoughts in our head, but then they don't come out. So like our motor speech system here is not connecting to our motor speech system up here in our brain. And so there's that disconnect in that system. Like naturally that should just happen. We should hear words, obtain them and then be able to say them. But this diagnosis doesn't allow for you to say them and then to transition from sound to sound, like just something that kind of naturally happens in development. There's a break in that.
Okay.
And you need a certain kind of therapy to remediate it usually. But a lot of the time on augmentative devices recommended in the meantime, sometimes parents are very against it. And I get it, it's scary. But that allows for us to say, like, their language can keep developing. We can keep talking with them. We can keep them engaged.
And eventually the words will come.
Exactly. Yep.
So what do you think is the biggest apprehension with using that device? Because
think-
they're never going to speak because
Yeah.
now they have this. Okay.
I think that's scary. I don't know if as a parent.
That was and
were
you
scared?
heard
Yeah.
like I wasn't scared because for me, if I could understand anything he was thinking, it was like the biggest lifeline I could have ever been
Yeah.
given. And my husband in all of this, like he was given an iPad and he would start singing like his versions of whatever videos he was watching. And my husband was so tuned in. I was so riddled with fear that I could not. And the extension of Shay and Bernie to their Speech Start family is like another level that I couldn't even explain because Laura, who's your office manager, came out to me one day and she was like, I said, Laura, why does everybody else know he's going to talk? And I don't feel it. Like, I'm his mom. Shouldn't I have that gut instinct? She's like, you're gripped by fear. There is nothing that you can see or hear. And I remember that day, like there was this release. And when I went home, my husband was like, if he's into the iPad, let's buy him 10 of them. Like, why are we taking something from him just because it may or it may not do something? It is doing this connection. Like, just let him have it.
That's what I was really looking for with him. I felt like he was tuning everything else out because communicating was hard and there was no means to do so.
Right.
And I wanted to play on like, he's so tech savvy.
Oh my God.
He could fly through an iPad. I'm like, I don't even know how you just did that. And the kid has cracked my iPad code repeatedly. I've had to change it multiple
Every
times.
code. He knows everyone's password
he
to
is-
every phone.
Yes.
I learned my husband's password, which I've never asked for. I've never gotten. Because he took my husband's phone and was doing it next to me. I'm like, honey, I got your password now.
He just is so, like, you could just tell. Like, I'm like, he's the only child.
Yeah.
I've had to change my password on my iPad repeatedly.
The
because
school.
this guy
We
can-
got locked out of, oh my God. So I'll tell you this real fast. But last week, we are having volume issues on his device,
I
which
did
he
notice
doesn't
that,
really
actually, yes.
use anymore. So you know what he did? He went on his personal, we have like 6 of them now, and downloaded another version of Touch Chat
this
for
is how
$300 and knew
Yes.
my password. So it went through.
That was the app.
Yeah. It was
Most
a
adults can't do
speakeasy or
that.
something.
She's like, calls me. I'm on vacation. She's like, he got
Fraud alerts are coming up. My credit cards are getting shut
She goes,
down.
what the fuck? She's like, $2.99 for an Apple app? She goes, what?
And then I looked,
He is
and then
so
I put it
freaking
together. Like, he wants to say something that he knows isn't going to flow out here. So he's trying to use a device that doesn't tell him or tell us what he's trying to say. And I was like, Jesus, Craigie.
I know. He like figures it's real. I'm telling you, I can't teach adults
But
who are in my
you
field to
opened
do
that door. Like, you opened that door. And it was hard. You trained me how to use it.
Yeah.
You trained the school how to use
I
it.
had to do a lot of training, and that's like a huge issue just in New Jersey. I mean, you would think we're so well educated, we have access to so many resources.
Yeah.
I have speech therapists tell me like they don't have the prerequisites for that device. I'm like, what are you looking for? They have
Yeah.
no means of communication. What do you mean?
This is really
prerequisites?
the
Do you need to
biggest
be
issue.
certified?
No, not necessarily to do. So some of that is the augmentative piece. I have lots and lots of training in, but then I also am prompt certified, which is like we're providing tactile cues to the face to actually get him to speak.
Like,
to
she's
talk.
literally teaching him how to
Right.
move
Use
his
his
mouth.
mouth.
So we would do that, yes, with the device. So like I knew he could say way more on the device than he could say here.
Yeah.
So I wanted that to continue to grow and develop while this was kind of like
Yeah.
lagging behind. And now it's like actually really meeting. And I always say he's like the perfect example of how that device does not hinder verbal
No,
speech.
it doesn't. And he didn't speak. Well, he started having words during COVID when we were doing telehealth. And then he went into the preschool program. And because it was a COVID crazy era, the masks really became a...
Oh, it's terrible.
That was that was.
They
really
masked a
bad.
kid who needed to see speech and who would use it
kids
as
need
a
to see
sensory.
speech.
Right.
Right.
Yes. Then he was. I remember he was
Yeah.
biting
He
on
was
the mask,
sucking
which a lot of
on it. It
kids
was
were doing.
horrible,
Yeah,
right.
they were like biting or sucking on it. Then the whole thing was wet. Then they
Right.
were getting
Yeah.
rashes all over their faces.
I'm like,
And
how
the
is
teachers
this?
are masked and nobody can see.
Right.
I mean,
and they wanted us to do speech therapy like
Yeah.
that. I'm like,
that's crazy.
What's the point
Yeah.
here?
So we had in our school they were doing like workarounds with it. So they would have like their clear mask on, and then they'd have.
Well,
their
that's what
face
she
thing,
she had a
and then
shield,
it was-
so they
yeah.
could
Yeah.
always see. And I hope tell me if we need to edit this out, but we had this is when like Shay really stepped in and Bernie and created these like little micro groups for
Yeah.
any parents
Yeah.
when the world didn't open up but opened up to medical services and facilities, and had these little groups. And it turned into like there were only 4 or 5 kids when we started, and we would all sit in the parking lot and we would all talk and have each other's backs, and they would come out and the kids were friends, and it like gave us this, not just in the COVID era, but as a parent of a child going through a much different journey than what you see your friends' kids going through. It gave us the support system.
Yeah, that was like, I always say that was the best group of parents collectively we had at the same time, where like they all had, some had similar things going on, but they all had really different journeys. They all done, very well on each of their tracks. But, it was like so nice to see that the parent support,
Yeah.
the no judgment.
But that's what
it
you
was, like,
that's
so
what you
unusual.
foster at Speech Start. Like, it's hard as a parent when you go to certain places and you automatically think like, what's everybody thinking of my kid, or is he gonna do this? And it's not just the behavior stuff, but walking in there, we could just be. Like, we didn't have to feel like we were bringing them in. Greggy used to climb under Laura's desk, and she'd be like, "Hey, can you get that on the floor and put it over there for me?" And I'd be like trying to wrestle him out of there. She's like, "Just go sit down.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay."
Yeah, we are very lucky to have her in particular because, and she would share this. I know that she's okay
Yeah.
with that. She has her own journey with her own son
Correct,
with,
yeah.
with communication challenges. So I think for her, it's so amazing having her, and I feel so confident being like, I think you need to just like kind of check in on this parent. Like
Yeah.
she gets it. She's lived it. She's just got that, and that is so unusual.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I don't care about anything else you do. Like that is the most important thing.
It was everything.
Yeah.
All of you. Your mom, say, we posted today, I'm going to put this out there, obviously. Shay has come on board and Bernie from Speech Start to be our sponsor.
Yes.
For our next event,
We're so excited.
lighten things up a little bit. We'll go back to being heavy because I can't help it. I cry. Stacy doesn't cry. Maybe you'll cry today.
Doubtful.
I don't know. You're usually not that emotional.
Well,
though.
the thing I loved about Shay in the beginning, and I was like, Shay, I'm not a hugger, so
Yeah.
don't think that I don't love you to pieces and I'm so grateful. I just don't like hugging. And she's like, me neither.
No, my mom and I always have that. She's very huggy. Even my husband, I'm like, all right, get off. Get off me. Like, stop touching me. And Greggy was the same way. And I'm like,
That's my
I
kid.
love you, but I'm not
Yes.
going to hug you.
Which
Oh,
also
Greggy likes to hug.
Well, he
likes
would. James is a little
Depending
more.
people.
Yeah.
he'll
her other
snuggle
son's a little more.
the people that matter to him.
He will, and he'll sit with you, but like at first he's a little like, and I'm the same way. Like I'm a little like, do I trust you?
Yeah.
Like and he was the same way. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I just get you, and your
Yeah.
personality is also like that.
Very much.
So that I did like. Yes, I'm like not. I'm.
We could be
loving it a
very
different way.
practical and not have to. When I wanted to be emotional, I would call your mom.
Yes, she is the one who
Laura.
like absolutely,
Yeah.
and Laura too. Like my mom's always been like, you don't want to hug me. I'm like, yeah, but I still love you. Like
Right. I
I'm just
see you
not
all
gonna-
the time.
I'm loving you
hug
with a
you.
little space.
Look,
Right,
I have a theory that if everybody felt more like us, COVID may not have been as big
Yeah.
of a thing as
all
it
of
was.
the hugging and kissing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like get out of my face.
Right.
I used
Yeah.
to tell Betsy that all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, she's
if you
also like-
Italians stop hugging and kissing me all the
Exactly.
time, like maybe I
Yeah.
wouldn't have had COVID.
Yeah.
7 times.
Exactly.
Which is weird. We only had it once, and we were back in
Yeah.
that therapy world.
We didn't
as
get
soon
it
as
for
we
3
could.
years.
Yes.
I
And then we
only
got
had
it
it
like
once.
7 times.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a
It wasn't
couple.
that bad.
Yeah, no, I know. We didn't really. I had it once.
It was like annoying.
But people were like when we opened up and we were, I was doing prompt. I was touching kids' faces.
Yeah,
which
she
at the
would
time
ask.
was
I'd be like, do whatever you
I
got to do.
knew you would be fine with it. Some of the
I
parents
could
were
care
like,
less.
"What are your protocols?" I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm
Help your kid.
What's more important?
know.
We're gonna get sick." I mean, at that point, it was different. We were scared, but I'm like talking development. This is so critical this
Right.
time, and that
That's
was
the
also a game
thing.
changer.
Yeah.
You didn't waste any time.
Yeah.
During that
Well,
period.
and Shay and I have gone when that happened, and I saw, like, obviously bringing them there, you saw the magic that happened, but to bring it to a group setting with other kids and lead kids who have different versions of kind of the same thing and bring them together and see those relationships. I then went down this path of like, and I still feel very, very strongly that this will manifest one day, that you should run a school for children.
Oh, I would love to. And my mom, that's always been one of her, life goals too. And I'm like, you know what? That's something that I can't, like, that would just fulfill me on such like a different level.
It would
like being able to do that all day.
Life changing, because we always hear the behaviors, and I'm not a therapist, but I'd like to think I was kind of trained at this point by the best that the behaviors are the communication and the symptoms. And if you're not leading forward with the communication, which is the real frustration, it's like putting a Band-Aid over that doesn't stop bleeding, and you think the Band-Aid is going to fix the bleeding. It's not that hard. Between OT and speech, a lot of these kids would be in a much different, literally a different world for them.
What I'm shocked by is Quinn just got his first IEP last year. But like every time they came to me prior to even having like the evaluation done, it was like, well, can we do this? And I'd be like, yeah, do whatever the fuck. Like,
Whatever you need
Do
to
what you have to do.
And they'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, this is great. And I'm like, do people really say no? And they were like, yes.
They
like,
do. They do.
And it's wild. There's a girl who lives down the street from us, and they came to her parents in kindergarten, and they were like, we want to do a speech evaluation. And they said no.
Yeah.
And now she's going into 6th grade, and
you know what
really
doesn't
can't
help is
understand what she says.
the pediatricians are not helping after
No.
COVID. All of these milestones were bumped back. All of these, like, they should be doing this at this time, and all that time is lost. And there's this whole wait and see approach with everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, when we get to 3rd grade and we can't do any of these things,
Right.
then
Yeah.
like
It's a
I'm like,
problem.
there's only so much we can do. Like,
Then it's like
therapists and educators to
mitigating.
help. Yeah.
Then it's like,
And
how
the
do you,
and the speech program now for speech and OT, they said they've never had this many kids
There's a
in the
lot.
program,
yeah.
which is wild. I mean, I guess it's going to improve now that like we're having incoming kindergartners that haven't
I think the
had-
parent education is helpful
That's
too.
the biggest thing.
Parents, like, you are always a pusher in a good way, and I'm a pusher too. And people will tell you you're crazy. People will be like,
They did.
like, even family members, like, they're fine. I've had my own family members say that, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna get that checked out. Even if it's fine, I'd rather
Yeah.
have it be fine and get it checked.
Always.
Like, it's this whole like, let's wait and see. Or even sometimes in the school system, depending on where it is, some of them will be like, just give them a little bit more time. Let's wait and see. Or it's the end of the school year. Oh, they can't read. Well, what happened all year?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
What if
They
you-
drop those bombs right at the end of the
See,
school
yeah.
year, and then
there
it's
was
like,
me
see you later.
Who was like, I understood everything Quinn said because
Yeah.
I had
Yours,
been
yeah.
translating.
Right.
So it to me he was.
I actually had
Right.
parents say that to me the other day. Wait a minute. I listened to him talk to somebody else, and they were like, they didn't understand anything he said, but I do.
understand
I was
everything.
Like,
Yeah.
And that was so the school actually came to me and was like,
That's good.
This is our problem. Like
Yeah.
not a problem, but like
This is-
in
This
your-
is our-
in your
yeah.
lingo. This is what we think. This is what we're recommending. Are you okay with it? We want to have the speech pathologist come in and evaluate him. And then it went because then his reading was suffering. But
Yeah.
like he's doing guided reading when everyone else was reading independently, which I did not realize either because they don't tell you these things.
Right.
They're just
How
setting
you don't
stuff
know
up.
what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And literally that is.
So then they're telling me how he has all this struggle reading, and I'm like, but he comes home and he can read this book, and they're like, that's because we read it together 5 times before
Right.
we're sending it home with you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
now,
I'm
so
happy
now I'm
that
like,
they
give him everything.
said- yeah, that they
Give me the
brought that
menu.
to your
I'll check
attention.
it all.
Yeah.
What do I
Whatever
gotta
they need.
sign?
Yeah.
Whatever we need.
But that's also like a double-edged sword, and I'm sure I know you and I have spoken about this, that some districts push everything at you and think that because they're checking all the box, well, here you go. I'm
Right.
giving you and then you look at what we were obviously lucky enough to have the best of the best. So when you go into the school, and this is not a dig at other professionals, it's just when you see what
they offer.
they offer.
Yeah.
and they don't give you options, and you can't just leave them and go to somewhere else unless you literally sell your home and move to somewhere else and pray and hope that it's better there.
Yeah.
Like, my kids aren't so extreme, but they need help and resources. So, like, they're in this middle gray area.
There's not a lot for kids that are in this
Right.
middle area.
which most of them find themselves.
Right. And especially kids, anybody who uses an augmentative device,
Yeah.
very little training on that. And anyone who has something like apraxia, even literacy disorders. Speech therapists can treat literacy now. It's like within our scope of practice. But like, I could tell you in graduate school, I learned zero about literacy. Anything I had to do continuing education on, but I'm supposed to be treating this? Like,
Right.
so that's like huge issue.
Yeah.
Is that like we don't learn about, we have 2 years of graduate school to learn all these things, work with adults, work with kids, you know, we could
And it's
work
ever
in-
evolving, the technology.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
especially
Yeah.
now, and that's one of our biggest, positive parts about all of this is that my kid does have the world of technology. And where's it going to be in 10 years? Hopefully, I tell you, I had this reoccurring dream that he was going to come up with how to solve apraxia by putting these. Do you remember me telling
Yes,
you that?
yep, yeah.
It was like so
honestly didn't
that
sound too far off either.
Apple
I was
was
like-
going to come in and put them in this accelerated AAC device program, and then he was going to come up with this and figure. And I was like, Shay, I had this dream. She's like,
I mean, of
it's-
course, look at my
Greggy probably already
girlfriend's
did
son
that.
They're 12. They're about to be 12. He has severe autism, pretty much nonverbal. Well, now he has words, but it's very much communicate needs based. But they didn't have an iPad. They had a
Yeah.
book.
Yes.
And then he would like point to what he needed,
Yeah.
and then eventually the words came.
Yeah.
But I'm not so that was only 10 years ago.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And to be honest,
So in 10 more years, yeah.
I've seen that recently. to be honest
The
with
book?
you. The book.
Yeah.
And
a
that-
lot of
yeah.
ABA professionals
Yes.
still push
And
that.
I think if you have parents too that don't want to use this device
Yeah.
because they're afraid, then this is going to be something.
Yeah, I have older kids and I'm like, they need this. They're so frustrated. They're having all
Yeah.
these behaviors and parents are like, they're never going to talk. I'm like, but you also, and I can't imagine there's probably, they say that there is a grieving process with
There is.
accepting that there's a possibility that this is an alternative form
Yeah.
of communication that may stick, but it also might not. So why not
Try
try
it.
it,
I have to tell you, because he could see how the words were spelled, he would see the picture.
He told
and
himself
then
how
he
to
would-
read this way, by the way.
Well, yes. And now, I don't think I even told you this. The other day I saw him. He took one of our other iPads and my phone, and he matches up because he has photographic memory. So he snapshots every page on the on the cell phone or iPad, and he wants them to be exactly the same. So he takes one that he wants it to look like, goes in the app store, looks at the app, and spells it out to find that exact app, to put it on the iPad to map the same way it maps as the other one. And he's spelling them.
Isn't that amazing?
So it's like a different kind of sorting. Like he's sorting and matching.
Right.
But like it's
But, like,
proving to
in
us
a-
like
but
there's
he-
so much
Right.
going on.
That, like-
like right? Like
that
you're like
he understands.
I never showed him how to do that.
I was. He got
it's
really
crazy.
upset one day and he wanted something and I couldn't figure it out. So I gave him my notes app and he started typing UUUB and I'm like, I don't know what that is. And then all of a sudden it was calming him that he could focus on how to communicate, that he got it out slightly. And I'm like, YouTube? And I searched it. It got deleted from that iPad, put it back on. He was, do. And I'm like,
We always say with him
Crazy.
too, like if something weird is happening with him, like
yeah, you've always said
he's
that.
communicating, he's telling us something.
Right.
Like for a while, I'm like, he's been just under his breath singing "Happy Birthday, Happy
Mm.
Birthday." We connected the dots. I'm like, that was a really fun experience. Like you had all
Yeah,
your
all
family
my
there,
family,
everyone was
yeah.
hugging. He was trying to hug me in that, like put his arm around me in that moment. I'm like,
He's happy.
yes, like
Yeah.
he's like, I love this, like so connecting all those dots, like there's always a method to his madness. And honestly, that's a lot of these kids. It's like we're trying to put the kibosh on something that
Yeah.
we're like, just listen, just
Right.
watch. And I'll tell my grad students all the time, I'm like, just take a minute, just watch, because we're still like, we gotta get this done. But like, maybe just take 1 second and see, why are they doing that? There's kids don't just do things for no
things.
reason.
Yep.
Like they're not trying to be bad.
No.
But then we put a behavioral
James
approach
might
on
be.
it. Well, he's a little bit of a klepto.
He's
that guy.
a little
I say,
bit of a lot
I'm
of
like, the
things.
klepto's in my room. Get out of here. He comes and he steals my toys and he runs away.
I bet.
And he's fast. And he's hilarious. Like
Oh,
he's
he
really,
knows it.
He is a character.
Thank
like,
God. God
Greggy
bless
is the more
Lizzie.
serious one. Greggy is like, like he is the one who like is observing and analyzing and
And,
James
yeah,
is the party.
absorbing.
He's the party guy.
Yeah.
Like You're like, what is James going to do
Why
today?
James and I are going to be BFFs.
You are not allowed
hilarious.
to. That kid would literally be in his birthday suit all day.
I love the bad ones.
He is like a little, yeah.
Liam was always like one of my favorite toddlers because he was so bad.
My oldest daughter's like that.
Like
My younger
sweet
one's a little
bad, but
serious.
bad. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
oh,
That's James,
don't
yeah.
touch this.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yep.
Watch
Yep.
me.
That's him.
Yeah, he's
He'll
like-
literally look at me, and he takes my toys, and then he'll just look at me and run full speed back to the other room, like, and Greggy's like having a panic
Freaking
attack
out,
that like
yeah.
you just took all my toys, and I'm like, oh, I feel you, Greggy. But his therapist Lizzie is like, she adores him.
Yes, and we talked about when James was getting evaluated, and I almost think his apraxia was different but more severe.
I actually
in the
do think it was
physical,
more severe.
structural
Yep.
way.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And Shay and I, the first thing she said to me was, I'm not the right therapist for him.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're going to put me in a tailspin right now?
I know. I was like, I am so sorry.
And I was like, what?
I know
I'm
who
like,
is, though.
I don't care.
Why though? Because it was more of a structure,
No,
or
because
he's a klepto.
maybe.
That part, I was like, you're overwhelming me.
Because James needs a different disposition
Yes.
from a therapist, and Greggy needs, it's like what I need from a therapist that I'm talking to sort things. Like, you're not a match for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
and he
that-
had the same organization that my mom always says, you know, you always had some of these, like, you know, things going on too. And I was like, it's funny because I feel like I understand
Yeah.
the communication issues. I feel like I understand the need for organization. See, like, James didn't need
You
that.
needed chaos.
Yeah,
Not in a
he
bad.
thrived
And
in
this
the
isn't to say you would have obviously been
Yes.
insanely amazing, but you know, as the person who's leading this entire family and families, this child would be best suited, I think. Here.
And sometimes, like, that's the first step, is like opening them up to the person to then accept
Yeah.
the therapy. And
Yeah.
and sometimes I, like, you know, I'll have grad students who come to me with a resume or therapists, and they're like, oh, I had a 4.0 GPA. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I literally don't care. And I was always an academic person, but I'm like, let's see how you interact with them.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's like step one. Like, I get you. And sometimes
Yeah.
I get Greggy, but James's personality was different, and his therapist opened him up, and then all of a sudden he's talking. He's
like
saying
immediately,
these, like,
he started
he's
talking
funny.
with Lizzie before he ever started
yeah.
talking at home.
I knew when I saw them together, I was like, this is the match. And sometimes it's not totally perfect, but when I saw them together in the first session, I was like, this is his person.
Yeah,
That's
and
it.
it is. And he
Yeah.
cried last week when I got stuck in traffic and didn't make it because he didn't wake up.
Yeah.
We got home. I told Lizzie this. He goes, Lizzie.
Yeah.
He thought he missed his time with
Yeah.
her. He
Like,
wasn't going
he
to see her
genuinely
anyway
loves
because
her.
she wasn't there. He was going to be with Greggy,
Yeah.
but he would have been fine. But when he realized he wouldn't get out of the car, he was like,
Poor guy. But you can tell, like, you know, and you do your best, obviously, with every child, but like certain kids you just connect with.
yeah.
Like, and I just saw that they connected, like, instantly. There was nothing even therapeutic about it necessarily. It wasn't, you know, she's a very skilled therapist as well, but like,
She's
it was
great.
just their personalities
Yeah.
just matched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she loves him like he was her own child.
You all do.
Like, yeah.
You all
Yeah,
do.
We love I have to say, we love the Fasones. But like,
Thank God somebody
Greggy
does
also
now.
needed like a hard, like a firm. Like,
And that's like how my
love?
husband and I
Yeah.
are with both kids.
Yeah.
Like James, if I yell at him, he's like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
sure. My husband, totally different. Greggy, when I yell at him, he's like,
oh yeah.
when my husband, he's like, okay, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever.
Exactly.
Right. But it's no different in that sense of, you know, the connection that different therapists have with kids sometimes, which is why the schools are such bullshit because this is who you get. You have no choice.
Right.
It either has to work or guess what? It's your kid.
Well, we've
Right.
got one therapist.
That's
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we have one speech pathologist. We have one OT.
Yeah.
I don't have a big district.
But even so,
But
that
still,
those
like,
people are
there's-
spread so thin. Think
Right.
about all the different needs that those people have. Like,
Right.
this field is becoming like you really need to specialize, and
Yes.
even like because we have OTs at Speech Start too. Now we have like a whole OT department, and it's like even those OTs, like I'm like some can do sensory,
Yeah.
some really have great training on that. Some have great training on like reflex integration. Some have really great training on visual perceptual issues,
Yeah.
which can affect reading. So, but you can't do it all.
No.
You really can't. And so the fields are moving more towards specializations, but in a school, you have to be almost a generalist, and there's no
Yes.
way you can do all of it well.
No.
What
just
is it
can't.
that I fuck this shit up all the time? The jack of all trades, the master of none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Right?
what it. That's what it's becoming. It's like you have to
Right.
treat this kid and that kid and that, and it's like literally, how can you do that? In their
Right.
defense, how can they
How
do
can
that?
It's
they do
not a
that?
fair.
Yeah.
It's a.
It's
It's,
not
an
fair.
unreasonable expectation
It
that
is.
can't be met, and that's where we're at right now with school. Is they want us to do X, Y, Z, and I'm like, now I know because, and we pulled Greggy out in preschool because Shay and Bernie had such a clear vision when like I couldn't see up from down, saying this isn't right. Like you definitely need to, and just have somebody say these things to you as a parent, because it's the same thing as I know my kid's smart, like, and to have that validation, and that is like the support for families that you guys provide. That was the biggest missing part of the first place we were at.
I always say, like, I had a speech therapist, and I actually started crying after I talked to. This was about an 11, or he might be 12 now, from a district not too far from here, who said to me, "Why do you even bother trying to get him to talk?" Literally said.
Who said this?
One of the speech therapists said this. I mean,
the
he's older.
school?
He has minimal. He verbalizes a little bit. But she's like, "Why even bother prompting him?" Literally those words. I was like horrified. And then when, and told the parent that I agreed with her, and I said, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want to discredit any professional, but I absolutely do not agree with that. I was like, I'm going to put my foot down, and I'm going to say I absolutely did not say that. I was so taken aback that I got emotional after the call, because I was like,
That was
did
a
you
school therapist?
Yes.
That's crazy.
because he was too old to talk. How do I know when
How
anyone's
old
going
was
to
he?
talk? He was 11, almost
He was
12.
11 or 12?
Yeah, but how many
Wow.
times? I mean, that literally is what keeps me going as a mom, and kept me going as a mom. That like you hear all these stories of a kid was 8 and all of a sudden
Right.
it just connected. A kid was 12 and then all of a sudden it connected, and it's like, as a parent, it's hard because you walk this line of you don't want to give yourself this false hope,
But you
and
also
then
don't want to give up.
But that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like
Progress
you're
is progress.
walking this like tough line of I can't give up. Like that,
Yeah.
I'm not going to give up on my kid,
No.
but at the same time, to have
There
a
are definitely tough
professional.
days, but
There
this
are.
professional said this to me, and I was like, again, I don't want to talk badly about somebody, but like I just
Sometimes you
I
have
just
to.
can't even I don't even want to be associated with that, because
Yeah.
I just felt like, then what's the point of anything we do, right? Like, why do I do anything?
Yeah.
If there's just like, oh, he's never going to talk. Oh,
Yeah.
he's never going to. Even if he talks and says a few words, do you know how much that means to that mom?
It's
Yes.
Like
when I
those
and
heard
that
words,
child.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even if it's not conversationally, like if he's verbally says "mom,"
Yep.
that would make her entire life. Like
It
she
did.
would be so content with that.
Yes.
That's her, she's okay with that. She is also
Yeah.
realistic, this particular parent, but with things that are hard for him, and he definitely has a lot of needs, and he didn't come to me as young as I would have liked, of course, but I was just like, did you just really say that to me? So like,
what else is she saying?
right, and like, how do you think he feels?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he knows that
They feel
the
it
bar's
and they
low.
hear it.
100%.
Yeah.
We have a boy in district, and I tell Shannon this story all the time. Everyone told this mother he's never going to speak, and
I can't even imagine hearing that as a
Right?
parent. I don't know if anyone ever said that to you,
But
like
she
I
never
can't even
stopped.
imagine.
And it was either between 3rd and 4th grade he started speaking,
Right.
and he came on the class trip with us.
That's amazing.
Nobody ever
Mom,
said that.
mom
No, because I never
accompanied,
thought
but-
that.
Well, we got to you guys so early.
And
Yeah,
he
you
that-
did.
verbalize. I mean, he wants food. Like he's chatting away. I mean, it's
I can't even
it's
imagine.
nice. But
Yeah.
can you forever? He's never gonna speak.
Yeah, it's
Wild.
it's
How
terrible.
dare you? Like
Right.
right?
Like I feel like that was just like robbed of him. I felt like so like this
Angry
is-
for him.
Right. Like I
Yeah.
was just like, you just took that totally
Yeah.
away from him. We're
Yeah.
done.
Did
like,
they take him out of the district?
So we're in the midst of trying to do that, but I said, once somebody says that, you're done.
You're done. You have
That's
to be
it.
done because there's no hope for you there.
Nope. Not
And they're
at all.
telling you they can't help him. So now how are you going to help him?
Yikes.
And that's what the fight becomes. It's like
Yeah.
we had the teacher say to us, well, I was like, well, what did your behavior consultant say? She's like, he didn't know what to do. I'm like, that's your answer?
Right.
Your expert doesn't know what to do, so like now I got to put him somewhere where I know people know what to do.
And in 2 seconds, we came up with what we should do,
In
which
2
was
seconds.
totally ignore some of the silliness and focus on the positive. What he was doing. Like,
Right.
not. It was like just like. Also, these are also just human beings.
These are
Forget about the
little
fact that there's
people,
any sort
right.
of need,
Yeah,
like
they're
special
kids.
needs of any sort, or communication issues or sensory
Right.
issues. These are just humans.
Yeah.
Like I remember looking at Greg and being like, Greggy, even before we leave, I say, we are not going to run in the parking lot. Look him right in the eyes, and
Yeah.
I say that just like that. Like, I'm not talking to him like he's like a
And
robot. Like, some
Right.
Greggy, like, I'm like, Greg, we're not running in the parking lot. You're not going to hold my hand because you're too big for that. You're going to stand next to me and you're going to walk to the car, you know, because we have a crazy parking lot where lots of kids have run. But that's how I talk to him about anything.
You always talk to him like a person.
Yeah, like he's a
and
human.
he got that you respected him.
Because
And that's why he would.
He also thought it was funny. Like, he would imitate the people that use this, like, bizarre prosody or talk to, like, I'm like, this is just a child. Like, just a kid. We're not like a robot or like, I don't even know what that, like.
No, he
like,
would
hello?
imitate. He would imitate what the teachers were saying.
Yeah.
Like he was mocking them.
Yeah, it was, and he would laugh.
No iPad.
Yeah.
And I was like, who says that to you?
Exactly.
And it was his teacher. Because they would say, like,
Yep.
all these little phrases. I was like, I didn't say that.
And he says it the same way they do.
In the robot voice.
Yes,
Yeah, robot
and I'm
voice.
like,
no more iPad. And I'm like, you tell her to go fuck herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Mom's going to tell you can have 10 iPads. And
Yeah.
so is Miss Shay.
yeah, so I was just like, what, like, this is that.
It's
That's one of
crazy.
the first things. Like, you just always have to think, like, this is a child.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this is, forget about anything else that they have
Right.
going on. This is a human being.
Yeah.
And we need to, like, treat them
with
as
human needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, again, kids don't want to do
What a
things
concept,
for no
right?
reason. So there's probably a method. I would say there's always a method to Greggy's madness. Like, you know, like if it looks like chaos or something's up, there's a reason.
He's
Something
trying
else
to
is
tell
going-
you something. Yeah.
He's out of sorts. But
Yeah.
I would have never understood that. I would have never been able to identify it as communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we put Greggy on this focus supplement, and I took him off it to try to something. Oh, something that was calming in his milk. And Shay came up to me that day, and she's like, nothing's wrong, but he's just a little off. And I was like, he's a little off. And I sat there, I'm like, how the fuck did you know that?
I was just like, something is weird.
Like,
yeah,
like she was like had a camera in my house and like knew I didn't give him it. And she's like, oh yeah, I could just tell he was slightly off. And
Yeah.
as a mom, I saw it, but to hear somebody else who gets your kid
Who
on
knows him so well.
yeah.
That's
And
special.
could understand how to then pivot in any situation where I just had this in his IEP meeting, whenever it was, saying like a therapist can see things before they happen because of a very small indication. And the untrained eye is going to miss it. And for that kid, it could go left and spiral so fast and become something so much bigger than having Shay sitting next and be like, oh, no, we're just going to do this and did it. And this just the way it's like the God Mary came and like magic and then boom, your kid is like this really great kid. And
yeah, that's also the luxury of, I guess, being in private practice. And some days it's tough, but it's like I can do whatever I want, and
Yeah.
that's great having that freedom.
Yeah.
I've always not been in the box kind of person in terms of like my rules and structure.
I was going to
maybe
say
yes.
you are and you're so not.
Yes, but
right?
exactly. So
Yeah.
like, but I'm like, let's try that. Maybe there's
Yeah.
no evidence to support that necessarily, but
Right.
let's try it. And if it works, then that's our evidence. That's enough.
That's
Right. And you're
support.
not encumbered by the school.
Right. I don't
Like
have
the
like I have
districts.
20 minutes and then I got to walk them back and then I got to
Yes.
find them in this room and that
Yeah.
like so that
Yeah.
part is so hard and that's what needs to be done in our districts. And on top of that, just even I should say on a side note, apraxia is not even recognized
Right.
like, in our school system as an issue. Like there's no special ed category for apraxia.
Interesting.
You can't even qualify at the preschool level for apraxia, even if you're severely
Even with a
apraxic.
diagnosis.
Correct. From a
Which
doctor.
ironically
Which
is
is
weird
crazy, right?
because that
Yeah.
is what qualifies my kid to be able to get as much speech therapy sessions as they can get.
Yes.
Not any other diagnosis.
But in the school, they wouldn't.
They don't even.
Would they
So
even
insurance
qualify
sometimes
for
recognizes- they-
speech?
They may not, depending on if they have anything else going on. It depends on
Depends on
other
the school.
diagnoses.
Wild.
Yes, but in the state, like it's not like, oh, you have apraxia. I mean, you need
Right.
intense. It's a different style of therapy too. You need lots. And Shannon did this especially in the beginning. You were coming to me like 4 or 5 times.
Five
a week.
times a
like,
week, yeah. 4
lot of
days
therapy.
individual and 1 weekend group therapy.
You need more therapy sometimes
Yeah.
than any other diagnosis.
yeah.
And
I hate
schools
apraxia
need to
the
identify-
most.
Yeah, it's tough. I
Yeah.
just actually went to a conference last week, which was phenomenal. Apraxia kids, and I was sitting there like, how I sat next to a mom and I'm like, first of all, you're amazing. How do you know all this? Like she was like you, but like I'm like, oh my gosh, like she knows everything. She was from Maryland and she's like, my child couldn't get any help. She was severely apraxic, needed this specific, it's a very specific therapy style too.
Yeah.
It's not like a lot of people will do general language therapy, but you need like something more specific, more intensive, lots of trials. Like it's just very specific. And if you get the wrong kind of therapy, you won't prove. And if you don't get it frequently enough, this right kind of therapy frequently enough, you won't prove. So in some ways, that's actually the hardest diagnosis.
Yeah. I've always said I hated apraxia. And for my kids, I know, and they've never had an official diagnosis of ADHD, but I would say to Shay, it just feels like what's going on up here so fast and what can't happen here are literally fighting each other.
Yeah.
And they're just,
And then
it's
couple it
losing.
with frustration.
Oh, yeah.
And then
That's the output.
Then you have behaviors, and then you
Yes,
have a
that's what
misdiagnosis,
happens,
and then you have the
yes.
wrong medication or the wrong treatment, and you have all this ABA therapy when you have
Right.
apraxia. It's like, depending on what you're working on,
Right.
if you are trying to target the apraxia, behavioral therapy is going to do absolutely
Nothing.
nothing for you.
Right.
Yeah, I had an ABA therapist email me yesterday. This boy can't say 3-syllable words. I'm like, well, no shit. He has apraxia. Like, why are you even working on that? Like, first of all, and his
Seriously.
prosody is a mess. I'm like, yeah. We're on like,
Yeah.
we're like literally just working on single syllable words with like
Right.
making sure we have the ending of those words. Like,
Yeah.
we're not 3-syllable words like butterfly. Like,
Right.
oh, no.
Stop.
Right. Remember when the therapist was like, I'm going to tell him to say cows love to go dancing.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, why would
What?
he care if a cow is dancing?
Also, that makes no sense. Greggy is a logical thinker.
Yeah.
Cows don't dance.
Like, can't we just say
Then you'll
cows
hear,
say moo?
"Cows love to go dancing."
Right. And he's gonna.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know.
My favorite. Like, now that I know that he's happy when he sings Happy Birthday.
Oh, yeah.
He's the happiest mother effer out there.
He is.
That
He
kid
really
is singing
is.
Happy Birthday all the time.
Yep. Yeah.
Although sometimes he's making fun of you.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yes.
Most
He definitely
times.
can do that. Totally.
I actually learned that when he went up to my husband and he said something and he looks at Greg and goes, brush your teeth, brush your teeth. And he goes, oh, I never tell him to brush his teeth. So that's not me. I'm like, are you mocking your mother? You better. And I promised myself once he started talking, I would never tell him to stop. I never made that promise with James because that kid doesn't shut up literally until the second he goes to bed. I'm like, James, stop talking.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
No.
He cannot do it.
No.
No. And the things he
No.
says, sometimes you're like, I don't want to laugh, but that was funny.
Oh my God. That kid.
That's why I
That's
shouldn't meet James.
that's a
'Cause
whole
I
nother
want to rock
segment.
up all
He
that.
is a riot.
That's a
Yeah.
whole other segment
Yes.
that I'm diving in. Well, I mean, I feel like this was like, talking about my kids the whole time, but that wasn't the point. The point was
Yeah.
just to make the example of, I honestly never thought I'd hear Greggy's voice. I mean, I used to pray, bargain, make deals with God every single night. And you and your mom both said to me, he's going to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And he is, and he does. And your mom gave me the most simple drawing to understand. She made these 2 circles with an overlap.
Yep, I know that drawing.
One
Yep.
says sensory, the other says
Was it the
communication.
Yeah.
And they overlap, but you have to go with the sensory. I still have that
Yeah.
picture in my head. And every time I get like I'm going to spiral, I'm like, go back to the simple. Remember, attack this first, and then this is second. And I think if schools could follow your lead
Yeah.
in really taking the approach of a progressive communication and a progressive occupational therapy lead, you see the behaviors drop off. We see it all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But instead we're putting a Band-Aid on the behaviors. And
Correct.
yeah, and I think that it's just like what comes first.
Yeah.
That's what we need to treat first
Right.
instead of what follows.
Right.
Because
Like
of that.
healthcare, as much as the apraxia we get, like this concentration of ABA getting all this funding,
Yeah.
like flip the script. Put the
We've always
horse
said that.
before
You and I
the
have always
cart
talked about that. Yeah.
and
yeah.
put this into speech and occupational therapy. And these behaviors, literally, I could tell the world they just go away.
I know you can get 1 speech session a day. That's it, max. But you can get 40 hours of ABA, a
ABA.
week.
40 hours.
Like it's like what?
Yeah.
I said, if I could have my sons live with Shay and Bernie, my God, they would be running the country. And your mom said that to me. Your mom said the second Craigie's communication connects, that kid's going to run the world. And
yeah.
I'm like, when's that going to be, Bern?
Yeah. No, he is really, he's something. I mean, he's extremely bright, but he's also like, he's had that internal motivation. It's just playing on kind of what he liked, what he was interested in.
He would have
and
never
building that trust.
reached a potential, though, if we didn't meet you guys. And I stand behind that
We love the facility.
every second of every day. And if you ever have a doubt about what's going on, or if anybody says something to you about what may be going on, just call Speech Start. That's my answer.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's sensory. They will help you guys identify and lead you to where you should be, and not just for their own interests. Like you guys are really there for the best interest of every single kid, and that's hundreds, thousands, I'm sure, by this point in your career and your mom's career. Yeah. And we love you.
Oh, we love you guys, and thank you. It's good to hear that. Sometimes the day-to-day gets a little nutty, and you're like, am I doing the best?
You're doing
Oh,
the best.
God.
All I hear
We
about...
can always do better, but
This is all I hear about is you. So thank you so much for coming on. This was
Thank
so
you.
informative
Yeah.
as someone who really doesn't
Yeah.
know, just getting started in speech myself.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, now you have the best resource. Thank you,
Thank
Shay,
you for
and
having
all
me.
Speech
Thank
Start.
you.
And
Yes.
where can we find Speech Start? Are we on Instagram?
Yep, we're on
yeah.
Instagram, we're on Facebook, we have all the social
What's your
media.
handle?
At Speech Start NJ.
Okay.
Yep.
So
we have-
follow, like, and follow.
Thank
Call
you.
Shay with all your questions.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.